So when I hear the question, how do churches support homeless people? The most basic level is, how do we treat people that are unhoused with dignity?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we treat people that are unhoused with love and respect and honor? There can be this tension for people in the church to look at our unhoused neighbors, and because we don't know what the solutions are, we turn our eyes away. And the worst thing that we can do really to a person in that situation is not see them.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Restorers Podcast with Water Street Mission. I'm Jack Crowley, and my co-host today is Rick Rutter. He's pastor at Crossroads Mennonite Church. He's got a lot of experience working in rescue missions across the East Coast. And most of all, he's a good friend. And so excited to have Rick here. Today, we're going to be talking about how our church is part of the homelessness solution, maybe even trying to answer whether they are or not. The format today, we're going to listen to some of our guests' perspective on this. We want to hear what they think about the role that churches can play, and then Rick and I are going to chat a bit about that. So, Rick, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Glad to be here this morning.
Are you ready to roll?
Yeah, I think so.
We're going to jump right in. We're going to listen to some thoughts from some of our guests here at Water Street. So let's get going.
A lot of times churches kind of just give out free food. If you need like a blanket, sometimes they'll have excess clothing donated. A change of clothes sometimes can make you feel like a completely new person, especially after the weekends, because there's no showers on the weekends. And as a homeless individual back then, it sucked, let's be honest. I know during the time of being homeless, laundry was a huge deal. It's in human nature to want to feel clean, in my opinion, because it will make you feel like an entirely new person. Knowing that your body is clean and that your clothes are clean can turn a horrible day, even if it's raining outside, into I feel refreshed and I can take on the world.
Yeah, wow. Let's jump right into some. That's pretty heavy. Yeah. I mean, and I love that she calls out, like, it's great that churches, we often think of those, what are the simple things? Providing food, providing clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I love she went right into the shower issue, like not having a shower. Like clean clothes help. Mm-hmm. Especially, like she said, on the weekends when you don't have access to other resources. But man, what hits you in that?
So a couple of things that hit me in that. The first thing is, that food and clothing, it's the low-hanging fruit. And yet at the same time, in the United States, 95% of the churches in America are 200 to 250 people or less.
Yeah.
So not every church is a mega church. Not every church has the resources to be able to do showers or laundry facilities or anything on the weekend. Right. So we keep that in the back of our mind and that understanding and say, hey, are there ways where we can pool our resources, or are there opportunities for us to come alongside of somebody else together so that we can help? And I think that's where organizations like Water Street and what's going on at Tenfold and the Food Hub, and is there a way for us to think about doing that?
Right, and I think it's important, so understanding the context. Yeah. This individual who shared, she was experiencing homelessness here in Lancaster, and so knowing what's happening during the week. So, Water Street, if they're staying at our shelter, they're here 24/7, as she mentioned, like when I was out there versus here, obviously those concerns aren't the same. She's got a place to sleep. She's got shower accessibility every day. Mm-hmm. She's in a day shelter or in our programs every day and has those resources. Those who are on the street, there's overnight shelter available that some are able to stay at. There's day shelter. Mm-hmm. There's the shower truck that's in town a couple times a week, providing showers. Anchor provides showers after their breakfast and their meals that are scattered throughout the city. But there are gaps.
Yeah.
There are very real gaps. Mm-hmm. And when your whole life has been disrupted and everything that you own is with you in your hands, how much can you really carry? So
yeah,
recognizing, like, as churches are thinking about how can we come alongside? We don't want to repeat things that are already out there. We don't want to just duplicate services that are available everywhere. We want to step in and fill a gap. I think it's so important to hear weekends are probably the toughest.
Yeah.
Our church has done something about that, right?
Right. Yeah, and we're not the only one. But on a rotation basis, the cooling center in the summer, the warming center in the winter, opening up on a Sunday, providing a safe space for people to come, get out of the elements, get a hot meal, just get loved on.
And the shower thing is very significant, but even she revealed in what she said, like, it's about dignity. It's about how you feel. Like, after a long day, after working out, after being outside in the heat and sun, like, I know how good I feel after a shower.
Sure.
Right? You just feel like a different person. She nailed it. What are those other things you can do that can bring dignity, can help them feel a little different than they felt when they came in the door?
Right.
To me, that's a big part. Like, when we did the cooling center, it was, playing cards with some people. Like, that moment, like, their mind was away from all the stuff, and they were able to just kind of laugh and joke around and have fun and tease each other. They felt like a different person in that moment, and I think that is a big deal. So let's listen to another.
I know that there's some churches, like, they do like dinners and lunches and even like food, like groceries and stuff like that. And I think that's good. Like, and some places have like clothing and stuff like that. And I think that's really nice. I mean, like, the only suggestion I could have is, like, maybe they could, like, sometimes open doors and, even if it's as far as, like, putting mats out, like, for people who can't get into places like this, and it's just for a night or something, maybe, like, do something like that. That would be nice, because it is sad, like, to see people on the street, like that. I've never had to sleep on the street, like outside, like, but I've been in my car and it's not fun.
A couple things, point out. One, I love that she kind of explains that there are different experiences, right? Some people have literally sleeping on the street, others in cars, whatever. None of it is good. None of it's healthy. None of it's fun. Some of the similar things around what churches can do, but I like that she calls out, like, man, like, sometimes there aren't beds in the shelters. So Water Street, we have a limited number of beds. We don't have unlimited capacity, but we serve, 76 single individuals in our shelter, another 30 plus in our women and children shelter. The Clay Street shelter has 80 beds. There's a need, but that's often a place where churches step in. Have you seen that in the past?
We've seen
right?
that in the past, and even in Lancaster, and maybe it's by extension, those 80 beds at Clay Street have come out of a couple decades of churches stepping up, especially in the winter months, to be able to host. I know, most recently it was St. Mary's and a few others that were hosting shelters overnight. The shelter piece presents a different set of challenges,
Absolutely.
right? We know that. Yeah. And do you do men, women? Do you do a mix? Do you have kids come in? How do you manage security and all of that? There's so many questions. But the reality is, like, as a church, we have people that are sitting on our steps overnight. Like, how do we come alongside them? Well, and I think
it's right to call out the complexity of what it means to operate a shelter. But I think what we're saying, and we know, we both have experienced and seen, it's possible for churches to play a role in this. And so, as you said, I think that journey of, like, here in Lancaster, it started with winter shelter, and it started with about 7 or 8 churches that each did 2 weeks. A couple of them did 1 week, but they shared kind of through the winter. Be 2 weeks that this church would host it, 1 week that church would host it, and they'd get volunteers to supervise overnight, and it was safe. I mean, you have enough bodies there, you have enough people who are caring, and people are grateful to get out of the cold. It doesn't mean nothing ever happens, but for the most part, we've operated that for years in a very safe way. And then recognizing that this need and maybe there's ways we can increase the level of dignity and care for them. That's when it shifted to a more permanent solution.
Right.
You know, it was at the YWCA for a while, then it was at St. Mary's, then it was at Ebenezer Baptist, and now there's a permanent shelter that's been built, which is fantastic. But if we see these spikes and the waves of homelessness where the numbers are higher and we can't accommodate, maybe there's a place for churches to step in. So I'm not proposing a solution today, but I'm saying, like, churches shouldn't be afraid to dream and to think a little bigger.
How can we be a part of the solution? And what is it that we're capable of doing, and at least starting there?
The churches must stop being hypocrites. Many churches must stop being hypocrites. They must sit down with the fallen as God did. They don't have to wash their feet. Sit down and hug the fallen, those who have not eaten. Why do I need a church of 7 floors when the poor are outside? I'm beginning to get to know God. I hate that someone can get really rich, have a plane, have a car, and the true poor are outside of your church. The 4 of us went to church, and they stared at us like we were nothing. This made me feel so bad, because I'm going to seek God. I don't want to act like I'm more than anyone or anything. I'm going to seek God.
And I think it's usually the people who are more like, all about by the book and like, you can't do this, you can't do that. But in the Bible it says, if you're by the book, and the Bible clearly says you love thy neighbor, all these things, then why are you looking down on people, who might not have money to get nice clothes or like get a haircut or whatever the case may be? I don't think that's right.
Wow. You're right. I don't think it's right either. So when I hear the question, how do churches support homeless people, what's the most basic level? The most basic level is, how do we treat people that are unhoused with dignity? Mm-hmm. And how do we treat people that are unhoused with love and respect and honor? There can be this tension for people in the church to look at our unhoused neighbors, and because we don't know what the solutions are, we turn our eyes away. And the worst thing that we can do really to a person in that situation is not see them. Mm. How do we encourage within Crossroads, how do we encourage within the faith community to be able to say, hey, we see you. I don't have all the answers. I don't know what all the solutions are, but I see you.
Yeah. The visceral response that she had had less to do with the practical things the church is doing. I mean, there was obviously, these big, beautiful buildings that are sitting empty while there are people outside on the street. Yeah. Okay. But the visceral reaction was like how they did see her and looked away. Yeah. How they looked at her and it made her feel less than. And she began with like, hug them, sit with them, recognize our humanity is where it all starts. Yep. It sounds like one of her biggest barriers is how the church is viewing her. Yep. And if that doesn't break your heart, I mean, I was almost in tears as I was listening to that. Like, it's wrong. Mm-hmm. And we don't even see sometimes how the little subtle things that we do or don't do communicates a completely different message than everything that we feel compelled to carry as followers of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have to be brutally honest. Like, it's hard listening to that. Mm-hmm. For our listeners out there, maybe you got angry listening to that, or maybe you got convicted listening to that. I hope you felt something. Yep. Because it's real, and that's what God is calling us to. Yeah. Let's listen to another one.
I would just say that get involved. Don't have a hidden agenda, but chapel, you have different churches that come. Maybe if more churches would come, because not everybody does good in a church setting, but there's other churches out there that are different. They do different types of music. They do different types of preaching. I think that if we had here, more variety, somebody that's maybe not church going, that just might be the one for them. because I know I'm not a church person. I'm going to church now. But it took a little while to find one.
I mean, church plays so many different roles in our lives, right? It's obviously it's a place of discipleship and growth, a place to go and worship God, but it's a place of community as well. And I love just do something, right? Do something.
Come do chapel. Talk to Pastor Jeff.
He was meeting with the pastor when I walked out the door, talking about coming in to do chapel. I love that. But then also think about the fact that there are people who are not church people, right? And we expect them to come in the door and fit our mold, and kind of figure out like how to do this. Like, how do we help people navigate?
Well, I think everybody should go to Crossroads, but it's not just about the invitational where we open up our doors and we expect them to show up. But what are we willing to do to go out to reach out to them? Where are we willing to meet them at? Is it, I come and do chapel once a month. So there are people here at Water Street that know me as Pastor Rick from Crossroads because I'm here on Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month. But there are other people in the community that might know me because I stop into Anchor, or they might know me because I hung out in the square one day or whatever. Where are those opportunities? What are the things that we can look for to connect, to let people know that we see them out there? Not that I'm out there because I'm trying to drag them into Crossroads, but I'm out there because that's where they're at.
Yeah. And it just makes that transition more comfortable. She mentioned, looking for a church, having a hard time. Now she has found one. Right. But what opens that door? And I love, there's so many ways to do that. At Anchor, on the sidewalks, at community events, in the parks, just connecting, building trust, building relationships. So there's a familiar face when you walk in the door at the church. And it's not just the pastors, right? It can be anybody. Right. So I love, just do something.
Just do something.
Maybe be a little bit more diversified when it comes to what you give, because socks are great, underwear are great, but a 12-ounce container of body wash, that's going to last us longer than you think it's going to last. So maybe if churches were to kind of organize a little bit, kind of cooperatively, being like, hey, so on Tuesdays we're going to go out and we're going to hand out haircut vouchers or laundry cards, stuff like that. So that way somebody can go and do laundry. That's the kind of stuff that would really actually help. Because there's only so many times that I can wash my body with a single thing of, body wash. It's nice to have 4 or 5 of them just in case, but the amount of times that I've ended up throwing out those because I don't get to them and I don't use them, it's kind of one of those things of the thought behind it is fantastic, and thank you again for it, but I would kind of change gears a little bit.
Man, he's thought about it. I love that. He's really thought about how they can do it. This reminds me of conversations I've had with people in the past about the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion, and how that leads to certain kind of responses. Sympathy, we see somebody who's suffering, and we're like, oh, we feel bad for them. And then actions that are motivated out of sympathy often come completely from our frame of mind, from our world. And so, they must need X. They need food. Right. Well, not even thinking about what's going on. Empathy is kind of like putting yourself in their shoes and feeling what they're feeling. So now you're starting to change your mindset a little bit and understand, okay, well, if I'm in their shoes, oh, wait, there's meals all over. So maybe food isn't the biggest need because they've been able to get these foods. And I know the church down the street is doing something, so I'm not just going to repeat that. But let me think a little bit more about their situation. Compassion drives you to relationship. It's I want to know, I don't want to just imagine and put myself in your shoes. I want to actually talk to you and hear you. Right. And so talking with an individual who's been on the street and hearing their ideas and understanding man, okay, here's how, if I move to action, I can provide action that's really meaningful and connecting, but it only comes from relationship, which is what compassion leads towards. So sympathy is let me do something nice through my framework. Empathy is let me imagine I'm in their situation and come up with a good solution. Compassion is build the relationship
Right.
and respond out of that.
Sure. And the other thing that he hit on was the word cooperatively. And because he's right, if all the churches are giving away underwear, socks, and body wash, then they're going to have a plethora of that, but there's other needs that are going to be missed. And how do we as the body of Christ work cooperatively to say, how can we come together to meet a larger variety of needs that they express they need, not what we think they need. And how does that come about? It's us cooperating with our unhoused neighbors and their needs.
And I love that, because it's relationships with those in need that we're trying to come alongside, but it's also a relationship with others who are trying to do the good work.
Right.
So it demands a good response. How the churches can be part of it demands relationship with other churches, with other nonprofits, and with those individuals who are experiencing homelessness.
20 years ago, I was a pastor, and the hardest thing for me was, and still is how do you really not judge people, not decide what it is that they need in order to fix themselves or be saved, other than Jesus Christ. At Christmas time as a church, we do these little boxes where we wrap up things, Operation Share Christmas. But the fact that, there are real practical things that, as a person on the streets, so I've even tried to explain this to my family and say, legitimately, whatever I have or whatever I need, I have to carry on my back. And I'm grateful for everything that I get, and certainly you're not going to turn those things down. But, here I am 20 years later, I'm out on the streets myself, and I remember 20 years ago thinking, we need to get people that are willing to come and, be like a representative and sit down with someone. I'll say that, it's great to receive things, but having the opportunity to have a choice. I mean, people say all the time, well, you should be grateful because you got water and you got soap and you got this. And it's not just you're being picky, you have a choice. And as far as understanding your situation and where you're at and how you have to move things around, that it's really hands-on and practical.
Yeah, we could have had him respond to the last one, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
It's taking the time to get to know and understand what they're really struggling with, and what is going to be helpful, what's not going to be helpful. And again, he taps into the dignity of choice. And I think we do often find ourselves in that spot where we're like, well, they should be grateful for anything I've done for them.
Yeah, we won't go there.
We'll go there.
Yeah, I mean, because unfortunately, that is a mindset. It's the same mindset that says, we'll just get a job. Well, we don't know why someone is in that circumstance when we say those things. Yeah. We haven't had a conversation with them. We don't know. You hit on the trauma piece a little earlier. Like we don't know what someone's been through and what their experience is up to that point. How do we navigate this in a way that builds relationship?
I love that. And I think, circling back to the big theme, I'm going to risk quoting Ted Lasso, quoting Walt Whitman, and I'll get it completely wrong. But basically he said, don't be judgmental, be curious.
Yeah.
Are we leading with curiosity or are we leading with judgment? And our last, guest, what he shared, how often do you think that the person who's walking through your door that you see on the street or that's in the food line, wow, that guy could have been a pastor 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's probably not the first thought that any of us have when we're walking past a group of individuals who appear to be homeless. Yep. I know, and so many of the people that we've met through the years in our own experiences, the stories, the backgrounds, how they got to where they are, none of us could script or predict.
Right.
So if a church is considering, how can we be a part of this? Start with curiosity. Lean into relationships, get to know the people that you're trying to serve and listen to them. And it's not necessarily like they're going to drive everything you do, but it can inform really well what you're able to do well for them, right, and in collaboration with others. So yeah, I think relationships, being willing to risk and be curious, connecting with others, and finding out what is that sweet spot. You may not be the be-all, end-all for everything, but do something.
Yeah.
Right.
And in our desire to protect our people and our resources and things like that as a church, we have to be careful that we do have boundaries, but we don't build walls.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this episode, Rick.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jack.
Yeah, and I hope this conversation and the insights from our guests and some of our responses to it are helpful to you as you consider, how your church might be a part of the solution to homelessness in our community. Thanks for listening.